Emily Lawson had built her life around quiet routines. Every morning, she unlocked her small flower shop in Portland, Oregon, arranged fresh blooms in their places, and let the scent of roses and lilies fill the air. People admired her calmness, the way she always seemed composed and kind, but what they didn't know was that Emily's calm was the silence that comes after heartbreak. 2 years earlier, her 10-year marriage had ended, not in anger or betrayal, but in quiet distance. Her husband, Daniel, had grown into someone she didn't recognize, and by the time they realized it, the love that once held them together had already faded. Since then, Emily had been living softly, working, reading, cooking for one, and sleeping early. Her days looked peaceful, but they were empty of color. She often looked out the shop window and wondered when life had stopped feeling exciting. She told herself she was fine, that peace was better than pain, but deep down, she missed the feeling of being truly alive. Then, on a cloudy afternoon in early spring, a man walked into her shop. The bell over the door chimed, and Emily looked up from her counter. He wasn't like her usual customers. His clothes were travel-worn, his hair a little messy, and his eyes carried stories. He smiled, and there was something warm and grounded in it. "Hi," he said. "I'm new around here. Thought I'd get some flowers to make my place feel less empty." Emily smiled politely. "What kind of flowers are you thinking?" He shrugged. "Something that feels alive." She blinked at the answer, then chose a mix of sunflowers and wild daisies. As she wrapped them, he told her his name, Liam Turner. He was a travel photographer who had recently moved to Portland after years of moving around the world. He said he wanted to pause life for a while and remember what still mattered. After he left, Emily found herself thinking about his words, something that feels alive. It echoed in her mind through the afternoon. For years, she had focused on comfort and predictability, but somewhere along the way, she had stopped feeling alive herself. Liam returned a week later, this time with his camera hanging from his shoulder. "Your shop has the best light," he said. "Mind if I take a few photos?" She agreed, surprised by how easily his presence filled the quiet space. He moved around with calm confidence, capturing petals, window reflections, and Emily's hands as she arranged flowers. "You make things look effortless," he said softly. She laughed. "That's just years of practice." Over the next month, Liam became a regular. Sometimes he bought flowers, sometimes he brought her coffee, and sometimes he just talked. He told her stories about distant places, about villages in Italy, mountain sunrises, and people who lived with passion even when life wasn't easy. Emily listened, fascinated, as if each story breathed air into a part of her that had been asleep for years. One evening, when heavy rain fell outside, Liam came in just before closing. His jacket was soaked, and his hair dripped water onto the floor. "You're going to catch a cold," Emily said, handing him a towel. He smiled, grateful. "I was nearby and saw your light still on. Thought I'd stop in before heading home." They sat by the counter while the rain hit the windows. It was quiet except for the hum of the old radio and the sound of their voices. They talked about small things, favorite books, places they missed, what happiness really meant. At one point, Liam looked at her and asked, "Emily, when was the last time you did something new? Something just for yourself?" The question caught her off guard. She stared at him, unable to answer. "I don't know," she said finally. "Maybe before. Everything changed." He nodded slowly, his expression gentle. "Sometimes we get too good at surviving. We forget that we're supposed to live too." Those words stayed with her long after he left. That night, when she closed the shop, she didn't rush home like usual. Instead, she walked slowly through the rain. It soaked her hair, her coat, her shoes, but she didn't mind. For the first time in years, she let herself feel the rain, cold, alive, real. She smiled without realizing it. The next morning, she arrived at her shop early. The streets were quiet, the air fresh after the storm. When she reached her door, she found a small note taped to the glass. Her name was written in neat handwriting. "Meet me tomorrow. Let's find something new." No signature, but she didn't need one. She knew it was from Liam. Emily stood there, holding the note, her heart beating faster than it had in years. She didn't know what he meant. Maybe a walk, a trip, a simple moment outside her ordinary life. But she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Anticipation. She placed the note gently inside the counter drawer, trying to hide her smile from herself. That evening, as she watered the plants in her apartment, she caught her reflection in the window. Her eyes looked brighter, her posture lighter. She realized that even if nothing else happened, Liam had already changed something inside her. He had reminded her that it was okay to want more from life, to feel, to start again. The next day, she stood in front of her mirror longer than usual before leaving home. She chose a soft blue dress, tied her hair differently, and even wore the necklace her sister had given her years ago. When she looked at herself, she felt nervous but hopeful, like someone standing at the edge of something unknown but beautiful. Outside, the sky was clear, the morning calm. Emily took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Let's find something new." She didn't know yet what Liam had planned or where the day would lead, but she knew one thing for sure. She was ready to feel something again. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual. The note from Liam sat on her kitchen counter, next to her untouched cup of coffee. "Meet me tomorrow. Let's find something new." She kept reading it like it was a secret promise. For years, her days had followed the same pattern. Open the shop, serve customers, go home, sleep. But now, for the first time, she didn't feel trapped inside her routine. She felt curious. She felt alive. By 10 o'clock, she locked up her shop and made her way to the address Liam had texted her earlier that morning, a small cafe by the river. It wasn't fancy, just warm and quiet, with the smell of coffee and cinnamon filling the air. When she walked in, Liam was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups of coffee. He looked relaxed, sunlight touching the edges of his hair. When he saw her, his smile came easily, as if he had been waiting just for her. "I was starting to think you'd changed your mind," he said playfully. "I almost did," Emily admitted. "Then I realized, maybe that's the problem. I always back out before anything new can happen." "That's about to change," he said, standing and handing her a cup. "Today, no routines, no comfort zones. You ready?" She nodded, though she had no idea what he had planned. They left the cafe and walked along the riverside, the morning sun glimmering on the water. Birds flew over the bridge, people laughed from nearby benches, and for once, Emily wasn't thinking about work, bills, or loneliness. Liam stopped suddenly and pointed across the street. "There," he said, nodding at a small art studio. Inside, a sign read, "Walk-in painting class. No experience needed." Emily hesitated. "I'm not really an artist," she said. "That's perfect," Liam replied. "It's not about being good. It's about trying." The class was small, a few couples, a mother and her child, and then the 2 of them. The instructor gave each person a blank canvas and told them to paint how they felt, not what they saw. Emily froze for a moment, unsure where to begin. Liam dipped his brush in blue paint and started making bold strokes without hesitation. "Don't think too much," he told her. "Just feel," she tried. Her first brush stroke was shaky, but soon she began mixing colors. Soft blues and yellows blending together. She didn't know what she was painting, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. When she looked up, Liam was watching her, a quiet smile on his face. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said softly. "Just, you look different when you're not holding back." Her cheeks warmed, but she didn't look away. There was something in his voice. Calm, respectful, yet filled with something deeper, something real. After the class, they walked out laughing, carrying their half-dry paintings. Emily's canvas was a blur of color, imperfect but alive. "It's messy," she said. "It's honest," Liam replied. "That's what makes it beautiful." They grabbed lunch from a food truck nearby and sat on a bench overlooking the river. The wind carried the smell of water and roasted coffee from the cafe. Liam shared stories about his travels, photographing sunsets in Greece, street performers in Spain, and elderly couples dancing in France. Everywhere I went, he said, I noticed one thing. People who are happiest aren't the ones with perfect lives. They're the ones who keep feeling, even when it hurts. Emily listened quietly. She thought about the years she'd spent avoiding pain, protecting herself from disappointment. Maybe, she realized, she had been protecting herself from joy too. Later that afternoon, Liam drove her out of the city. The road wound through green hills and quiet woods. Where are we going? She asked, half nervous, half excited. You'll see, he said with a grin. After half an hour, they arrived at a meadow overlooking the ocean. The sky stretched endlessly, and the waves below sparkled in the sunlight. It's one of my favorite places, Liam said. Whenever I forget why life matters, I come here. Emily stood at the edge, watching the sea crash against the rocks. The sound was wild, untamed, the opposite of her quiet world. It's beautiful, she whispered. He looked at her, his tone softer now. You've been living inside a small box for too long, Emily. You deserve more than safe. She turned to him, meeting his gaze. Safe is easy, but easy stopped feeling right a long time ago. For a while, they just stood there in silence, watching the ocean. A breeze passed through, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers. Emily felt something shift inside her. A quiet courage, a spark she hadn't known was still there. As the sun began to lower, painting the sky gold, Liam picked up his camera. Can I take your picture? He asked. Why me? She said, smiling shyly. Because you look like someone who just remembered how to feel. She laughed, but stood still as he took the shot. The sound of the shutter echoed softly between them. It wasn't a romantic moment in the usual sense. No grand gestures, no touch. Just two people sharing a quiet understanding that life was more than survival. When he showed her the picture, she was surprised. Her hair was messy from the wind, her face bare, her smile small but real. She looked alive. Keep it, Liam said, handing her the printed photo later. A reminder of today. A reminder that you can still start again. Emily held the photo carefully, realizing how much this one day had changed her. She wasn't sure what she felt for Liam yet. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something powerful. Something honest. He had walked into her life like sunlight through a window, and now everything looked different. As he dropped her off that evening, the city lights shimmered on the horizon. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For reminding me that there's more to life than just getting through it, he smiled. That's what friends are for. But as he said it, there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip. A look that said maybe they both knew this was more than friendship. Something deeper, though neither of them dared to name it yet. That night, Emily placed the photo on her nightstand and turned off the light. The image of herself by the ocean stared back, wind in her hair, light in her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lonely. She felt hopeful. She whispered into the quiet, maybe this is what new feels like. And though she didn't know it yet, that one day would lead to something even more unexpected, something that would test her heart and change her life forever. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that day by the ocean never left Emily. She often caught herself looking at the photo Liam had taken, that small, genuine smile she barely recognized. It reminded her of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Every time she looked at it, she could almost hear the sound of waves again. One evening, as she was closing her flower shop, her phone buzzed. A message from Liam read, "Still afraid to feel something new?" She smiled and replied, "Not as much as before." A minute later, another message came. "Good. Meet me tomorrow. Same cafe." When Emily walked into the cafe the next morning, Liam was there as always, camera bag by his side and that easy grin on his face. But today he looked more serious. "I'm leaving next week," he said after a pause. "Got an offer to shoot a travel series. It's something I've wanted for years." Her smile faded slightly. "That's great. I'm happy for you." He studied her expression. "You don't sound happy." "I am," she said quietly, stirring her coffee. I just thought we'd have more time. Liam leaned forward. Then let's not waste the time we do have. He stood up, offering his hand, and without asking where they were going, she followed. They spent the day wandering through parts of the city Emily had never explored. Street markets filled with music, art galleries tucked inside old brick buildings, and a small rooftop where the view stretched across the skyline. At sunset, they sat there side by side, watching the golden light spread over the rooftops. You know, Liam said softly, when I met you, I thought you were someone who'd forgotten what life could feel like. But now, he looked at her with a quiet warmth. You look like someone who's starting to remember. Emily smiled faintly. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said. But it's worth it. They didn't talk much after that. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The breeze brushed against her hair. The city glowed below. And for a moment, the world felt still. Later, they walked down the street, laughing about small things, spilled coffee, broken cameras, and all the little imperfections that made life real. Emily realized she hadn't laughed like that in years. Liam had a way of turning ordinary moments into something meaningful. When he dropped her home that night, she lingered by his car. So, she said, trying to sound casual, where does this travel job take you? First stop's Italy, he said. Then maybe Portugal. After that, who knows? Sounds perfect, she whispered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It's exciting, yeah, but I'm not sure it'll feel the same this time. Why not? He hesitated, then said softly, because this time I'll be leaving something behind. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of passing cars filled the silence. Emily's heart felt heavy, like it was caught between two truths. One that told her to let him go, and another that whispered to hold on. Good night, Emily, he finally said. Good night, Liam. After he drove away, she stood there for a while staring at the empty street. The night air was cool, and for the first time she didn't feel numb. She felt everything. The next few days moved fast. Liam's flight was approaching, and they both knew it. They met whenever they could, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just a walk through the park. Each moment felt borrowed, like time itself was slipping through their fingers. One evening, Liam showed up at her shop just as she was closing. He looked tired but peaceful. Come with me, he said. They drove out of town again, this time to a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees. The air smelled like rain, and the sky was turning silver as clouds gathered. Liam pulled out his camera. I want to take one last picture before I go, he said. Emily smiled softly. Of the lake? He shook his head. Of you, she laughed. You already have a photo of me. Yeah, he said. But that one was about what you were feeling that day. This one is about what you've become. She looked down, shy but touched. And what's that? He stepped closer, his voice calm and sincere. Someone brave enough to feel again. Emily stood still as he lifted the camera. The sound of the shutter echoed softly across the water. When he showed her the picture, it wasn't perfect. Her hair was messy, her sweater damp from the mist. But her eyes looked different. They weren't tired anymore. It's beautiful, she whispered. Liam smiled faintly. So are you. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. They ran under a nearby shelter, laughing like children. Emily looked at him, soaked, smiling, alive, and realized that in a short time, he had changed her entire world. Promise me something, she said quietly. Anything. Don't forget me. He shook his head. I couldn't, even if I tried. She nodded, but her chest ached. She wanted to say something more, something honest and deep, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe they didn't need to. Sometimes feelings are loud enough on their own. When Liam dropped her off that night, she didn't say goodbye. She just looked at him, memorizing his face, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. He smiled, that same gentle smile that had changed everything, and drove away. The next morning, Emily woke early. She didn't open her shop. Instead, she walked down to the river where they'd first met. The cafe was quiet, the air cool, She sat by the window, ordered 2 coffees out of habit, and stared out at the water. Her phone buzzed. A message from Liam. "Boarding now. Thank you for reminding me what connection feels like." She typed back, "Thank you for reminding me what being alive feels like." Then she turned off her phone, took a deep breath, and watched the sunlight dance on the river. There was sadness in her heart, yes, but also something beautiful. The kind of peace that comes after truly feeling something. That evening, she hung the second photo he'd taken on her shop's wall, right next to the first. Beneath it, she wrote a small note. For the moments that changed everything. Customers often asked about the pictures, and she would smile, saying, "They remind me that sometimes the right person doesn't stay forever, but they leave something behind that lasts." And though Liam was far away, his presence stayed with her, in the way she smiled more easily, laughed a little louder, and started taking small adventures of her own. For the first time in years, Emily wasn't afraid of change. She was ready for whatever came next. Months passed since Liam's flight, and life slowly found its rhythm again for Emily. The flower shop was busier than ever, the townspeople kinder than she remembered, and she smiled more often without forcing it. Yet some mornings she would stand by the window, a cup of coffee in hand, and think of him, wondering where in the world he was, what he was photographing, and if he ever thought of her too. Autumn arrived, painting the streets in warm shades of red and gold. One quiet afternoon, as she was closing the shop, the mailman handed her a small brown envelope with no return address. The handwriting on it was familiar, strong and slightly slanted. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a single photograph. The photo showed a narrow street somewhere in Italy, sunlight spilling through the buildings. In the corner of the picture, she could see a woman in a floral dress walking away. Her hair caught in motion. It looked almost like her. The letter read, "Emily, I don't know where I am when you'll read this. Maybe by the sea, maybe on another plane. But wherever I go, something about you stays with me. You once told me you were afraid to feel again. I want you to know you did. And it changed both of us. This journey isn't just mine anymore. It's ours. Because every time I capture something beautiful, I think of how you'd see it. Liam." Her chest tightened, and for a long time she just sat there holding the letter. She didn't cry, not because she didn't miss him, but because she finally understood that some people walk into your life to remind you how to live, not to stay forever. Weeks later, Emily began doing something new. Every Sunday, she would take her camera, the one Liam had once fixed for her, and explore a new corner of town. Sometimes she'd drive to nearby lakes or old trails she'd never noticed before. She started capturing her own world, one picture at a time, learning to see beauty in things she once ignored, like sunlight on windows, or people laughing in parks. One chilly morning, as she arranged flowers in the shop, a young woman walked in. "Hi, are you Emily?" she asked, smiling shyly. "I'm from the Traveler's Eye magazine. We recently published some of Liam's work. He mentioned you in his interview." Emily froze for a moment, her heart skipping. "He mentioned me?" The woman nodded, pulling out a copy of the magazine and flipping it open. Beneath a spread of breathtaking photos, oceans, faces, markets, sunsets, was a paragraph. Liam had written, "Every photograph begins with a feeling. I once met someone who reminded me what it means to feel alive again. These photos are dedicated to her, to the courage it takes to start over." Emily smiled softly, her eyes filling. The journalist handed her a card. "We're doing a follow-up story next month in New York about people who inspired our featured artists. If you'd like to share your story, you'd be more than welcome." That night, Emily sat in her small apartment, looking at the card. Part of her wanted to stay in her quiet, safe life, but another part, the one Liam had awakened, whispered that maybe it was time to step into something new again. A week later, she packed her bags and boarded a train to New York. The city buzzed with life, people, lights, endless motion. It felt overwhelming, yet strangely exciting. The magazine event was held in a glass gallery filled with photographs from around the world. As she walked in, She stopped in her tracks. There, on the far wall, was one of Liam's photos, the lake where they'd stood together months ago. The caption below read, "Sometimes the best pictures are not of places, but of the people who remind us who we are." Emily stood there, lost in memory. Then she heard a voice behind her. "You always did love that one." Her heart raced. She turned around. Liam stood there, slightly tanned, his beard trimmed, camera hanging around his neck. He looked tired, but in the best way. For a moment, she couldn't move. "You're here," she whispered. He smiled softly. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But then I remembered what you said about not wasting time." He laughed quietly. "Guess we both learned that lesson." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. No words, no expectations, just that quiet connection that had always existed between them. The noise of the gallery faded into the background. "So," she said finally, "where are you heading next?" "I don't know," he said. "For the first time, I'm not planning. I was thinking of staying for a while." "In New York?" "In your life," he said, his voice low and steady. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. "You sure about that?" "I don't come with a travel guide or a perfect picture." He smiled. "That's exactly why I'm sure." Later that evening, they stepped out into the cool night. The city lights shimmered around them, and the air smelled faintly of rain. Liam walked beside her, not rushing, not leading, just there, as he always had been. They stopped by a quiet corner cafe. The place reminded her of the one by the river where they'd first met. As they sat down, Emily laughed softly. "Feels like we've come full circle." "Not full circle," Liam said, stirring his coffee. "More like the next chapter," she nodded. "You were right, about what? Feeling something new. It's terrifying at first. But once you do, it changes everything." He looked at her, his eyes warm and sincere. That's what living is. Not waiting for perfect moments, but feeling the real ones. Emily smiled, and in that moment, she realized something. Maybe life wasn't about finding one grand meaning. Maybe it was about the small, quiet truths, the laughter shared between strangers, the courage to start again, and the beauty of connections that come and go, leaving us better than before. The night stretched on, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't think about tomorrow. She was present, alive, and free. Exactly what Liam had wanted her to feel all along. Months later, Emily's photos began appearing in local magazines, often alongside Liam's. They didn't label their relationship. It didn't need a name. What they shared was deeper than titles. It was the rare kind of bond that reminded two people how to truly feel. And whenever someone asked Emily what her story was about, she would smile and say, "It's about someone who taught me to stop surviving and start living